My sister slammed the door in my face and said, "You're nothing. Not to me. Not to anyone. Get out." And then, she locked it. From the inside. I stood there in full uniform, bags at my feet, staring at the home I grew up in like it had turned into a stranger's house overnight. I'd just come back from deployment. I hadn't even taken my boots off. I was exhausted, grieving, hollow, and she treated me like trash left on the porch. She didn't even let me step inside, not to use the bathroom, not to breathe. She told me I was a burden, that I embarrassed the family, that I didn't belong. Then she closed the curtains. I slept in my car that night, parked 2 blocks away because I couldn't bear to see the house glowing warm behind the trees, while I froze in silence with nowhere to go. Mom didn't answer my calls. Dad hung up. They chose her. But the next morning, my phone lit up with a name I didn't expect. Colonel Amanda Pierce, my sister's commander. She said 7 words I'll never forget. "Major Bennett, I believe it's time we talked." That was the moment I realized someone knew the truth, and everything was about to change. I'm Rachel Bennett. I wore the uniform, followed every rule, gave my best years to the service. But my own sister looked me in the eyes and threw me out like I was nothing. Before I share my story, I'd love to know you're here with me. Just drop a listening in the comments or tell me where you're from. It helps more than you know. And if you believe stories like mine matter, hit follow. It lets me know I'm not alone in this fight. Thank you. Now, let me tell you everything. September air in Bozeman always carried a sharpness that sliced through skin and memory alike. I hadn't even cut the ignition before I saw it. The house, nestled beneath the yellowing aspens of the Gallatin Valley, still standing with that same cedar siding and those windows that used to glow with warmth. But that day, they reflected nothing back. No welcome, no light, just glass, cold and flat, like Lauren's voice in my last voicemail. I stepped onto the porch slowly, boots heavy from more than just the gravel. 42 years old, a recently divorced major in the United States Air Force, returning home with debt in my name and silence in my chest. I carried with me 2 duffel bags, a box of paperwork for my latest project on troop mental health, and 1 key I hadn't used in nearly a decade. My fingers hesitated around the brass, trembling not just from Montana's early frost but from something deeper. Hope. Click. Nothing. I turned the key again. Still nothing. I crouched down and squinted at the lock. It was new. Smooth edges, polished metal. Recently installed. A chill ran through me. Then my phone lit up with a message. Lauren. "You're nothing to this family. Don't come back." Asterisk. I didn't knock. I pounded. Once, twice. The 3rd time I leaned forward, peering through the narrow edge of the curtain. She was inside. At the dining table, military files spread before her like a strategic map. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She knew I'd come. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Then Mom. Then Dad. Same. Cold digital silence. I stood on the porch another 5 minutes, maybe more. Then I turned, walked to my car, and drove with nowhere in mind but away. The old motel off the highway near Malmstrom Air Force Base was still open, the kind with flickering signs and polyester bedspreads that smelled like 20-year-old cleaning products. I didn't care. I took the key, walked into room 208, and sat on the edge of a mattress that groaned under my weight like it had complaints of its own. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But grief, when it's old and familiar, doesn't flow. It congeals. That night, with my uniform jacket hung neatly over the only chair and the lamp casting amber over cracked wallpaper, I remembered Evelyn. She used to say, "Serve with your heart, Rachel." and make sure your heart gets seen. But where do you serve when every door you've ever trusted is locked against you? I opened my laptop, just for distraction. An email sat unread, an automated bank notification, joint credit account, nearly $900 withdrawn that morning, authorized by Diane Bennett. I stared at the screen, then slowly closed the lid. I wasn't just shut out. I was erased in real time. Lauren was born to be a leader. That's what they always said. From the moment she took her first breath, she was destined. Valedictorian, ROTC captain, track star, debate champ. She was the daughter who wore ambition like a second skin, the kind of child people wrote about in Christmas letters. And I? I was the other one, 5 years younger, always with my head in a cipher puzzle or reading about Cold War strategy when other kids were at sleepovers. I didn't want to lead. I wanted to understand patterns, motives, weaknesses. I wasn't loud, I wasn't flashy, I was precise. And in my family's eyes, that meant I was invisible. At family dinners, they'd brag, Lauren could command a battalion. And then, smiling toward me, Rachel knows how to read maps, right, sweetie? But there was one person who didn't look at me like I was a footnote. Evelyn. She wasn't blood, but she was more family than the people I shared DNA with. A former civilian analyst at Malmstrom, she used to sit me down with declassified war reports and say, "Strategy wins wars, not volume." She taught me how to spot patterns in chaos, how to stay calm in storms. She saw potential where others saw wasted space. When she died, sudden heart failure, I was 24. Just starting my first year as an intelligence officer. I flew back for the funeral. No one saved me a seat. And that was the day I heard it. Lauren, leaning close to my mother, whispered, "Rachel will never amount to anything. Evelyn backed the wrong horse." I froze in the aisle. They didn't see me standing there. Or maybe they did and didn't care. From that moment, I became a ghost in my own bloodline. They didn't bother including me in family newsletters anymore. My care packages from Korea and Qatar sat unopened for weeks. My military commendations were never framed beside Lauren's on the living room wall. Slowly, I watched myself disappear. Not all at once. No, it was a slow erasure, like photos left too long in the sun. One night, years later, long after I stopped expecting birthday calls, I returned home on leave and crept into the storage room while my parents slept. I found the family photo albums. I flipped page after page, searching. The first few years, I was there, smiling awkwardly beside Lauren's proud posture. Then, blank. From the age of 24 onward, there were no photos of me, not a single one. Like someone had made a deliberate decision to stop recording my existence. I closed the album and stared into the dark. My hands trembled, but not from anger. It was something colder. Final. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had deleted me. And maybe that hurt more than the locked door, more than the voicemail silence, more than the bank account betrayal. Because it meant that somewhere along the way, I stopped being a daughter. I became a mistake they refused to remember. After the divorce was finalized, I had nowhere to go but back to the one place I thought might still hold a sliver of shelter, my childhood home. I asked if I could stay in the attic until my reassignment to Malmstrom was sorted. Lauren agreed with one word: temporarily. She didn't say welcome. No one did. I paid for the utilities. I kept out of everyone's way. I didn't even take meals downstairs unless invited, which rarely happened. Still, I was treated like a squatter, an intrusion, a long-forgotten guest who had overstayed her ambiguous welcome. Lauren imposed curfews. "Lights out by 9, she said, as if I were some teenage delinquent. And my mother, Diane, would remind me at every opportunity. If you're not going to help with Bennett outdoors, at least try to be considerate. I cleaned the attic, replaced the bulbs, repaired the old heater myself. My father never acknowledged a thing, just sat in the living room each night behind his newspaper, folding himself into silence the way he always had. Evenings were especially brutal. Lauren held court at the dining table with Mom and Dad, casually discussing investment strategies for the store or updates from her command post. I wasn't asked. I wasn't glanced at. I was wallpaper. Peeling. One night, I came back from the base with a printed proposal tucked under my arm, a draft of Iron Mind, a mental health initiative tailored for enlisted personnel. I'd been working on it since Kandahar. I handed it to Lauren during dinner. She didn't even pause her fork. She glanced down, smirked, and said, "Still playing therapist to soldiers?" Adorable. I excused myself without finishing my water. That night, I climbed back up to the attic and sat on the floor in front of the storage wall. I'd avoided touching the old boxes, but something pulled me toward them. Behind a faded painting of the Absaroka Range, I felt a thin envelope taped to the wood. It was addressed to me. The handwriting was unmistakable. Evelyn. Dated 1998. I opened it slowly, like lifting a bandage from skin I hadn't realized was still raw. "If you're reading this," she'd written, "then you've lived long enough to learn that kindness is often mistaken for weakness. But you are not weak, Rachel. You are the flame they'll never be able to extinguish." I clutched the letter, my eyes stinging. For the first time in weeks, I let myself believe that someone, somewhere, had once known the real me, and had protected a piece of that belief for a future I hadn't yet reached. 2 days later, I walked into the kitchen and saw Lauren's laptop open. Her email client was up, a message half-typed. I don't usually read other people's mail, but this wasn't just anyone. It was her. "Rachel won't hold up. We just need to apply the pressure at the right time." I didn't breathe. I took a mental snapshot, burned the phrasing into memory, and closed the screen. Later that week, I visited the bank to update my forwarding address and freeze any shared financial links. The clerk paused and looked confused. "Your listed residence is 217 Golden Ridge, under Lauren Bennett as primary." "But that house belongs to a trust." I stopped. Number it didn't. Not anymore. Lauren had filed a legal update changing the owner of record. I was now listed under temporary occupancy. No rights, no voice, just space to breathe, until they decided I'd taken enough of it. At Malmstrom, my mind had always been my weapon. Data synthesis, code tracking, behavioral threat profiling. I lived and breathed the details most people couldn't see. I didn't need recognition, but I did need integrity. That's why it felt like a gut punch when James Carter texted me on a Thursday afternoon. "Hey, Lauren just presented your comms breach analysis in senior briefing. Your name wasn't mentioned once. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message, reading it twice, then 3 times. I had stayed up until 3 a.m. compiling that report. I had double-checked every line of protocol, every vulnerability vector. I even knew which footnote she'd left in, because I had misspelled redundancy and hadn't caught it. I drove home in silence, walked straight into the kitchen where Lauren sat with a glass of wine in hand, Mom beside her peeling carrots. "Did you present my report to the senior command?" I asked, voice tight. Lauren didn't flinch. "It's not yours. It's just information. Anyone could have gathered it." "You didn't gather it. You didn't publish it." Mom sighed. "Rachel, must everything be a confrontation with you?" I turned to my father, seated in the corner, eyes down on his folded newspaper like a man desperately hoping to be invisible. That night, I gave Lauren the Iron Mind proposal. One last olive branch. She skimmed it, set it down with a chuckle, and said, "Who would ever listen to you?" I stood still, trying to swallow the insult. "You're not the only one Evelyn believed in." "She was wrong," Lauren snapped. "She was old and sentimental. You're a failure. You always were." It hit like a slap. I couldn't let it go. "She loved me," I said, "and you hated her for it. That's why you can't stand to see her in me." Lauren stood so fast the chair screeched against tile. "Get out of my house, now before I call the cops." I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag from the attic, shoved in the essentials, and walked out into the cold. I sat in my car, staring at my phone for what felt like hours. No one picked up. Not friends, not old colleagues. Everyone had moved on, or chosen sides. That night, in the parking lot of a gas station, a new email arrived in my inbox. No sender, no subject, just a line of text. "Watch Lauren. She's clearing the field for something bigger. You're not part of the plan." I stared at it, unsure if it was a warning or a threat. I needed proof. Something tangible. Back at base the next day, I accessed the shared print server history. I'd left a sticky note for myself weeks ago about one of the machines Lauren sometimes used in ops. There it was. A 16-page document printed at 2:17 a.m. Title: Asset Reallocation Proposal, Bennett Property, Golden Ridge. She wasn't just pushing me out. She was getting ready to cash in. And I was the final obstacle, the last ghost she hadn't erased. Yet, the air felt lighter that day, like possibility had threaded itself back into the molecules. For the first time in weeks, I'd felt seen. After presenting Iron Mind to a senior officer during a briefing at Malmstrom, I'd watched him nod slowly, genuinely impressed. He asked for a full proposal draft. I had promised I'd deliver it by the end of the week. It felt like maybe, just maybe, everything hadn't been for nothing. I drove home with a kind of fragile hope, the kind you don't dare speak aloud. But as I turned into the gravel driveway and looked up at the house, something shifted. The lock. Again. There was a note taped to the door, written in Lauren's sharp, slanted script. "Your belongings are in the shed. Please remove them by Saturday." I tried the key anyway. It didn't fit. A text came through moments later. "I don't want to see you in this house ever again." My heart didn't drop. It cracked, quietly, like frost splitting old wood. I knocked. Nothing. No footsteps. No rustle behind the curtains. I walked around back, the familiar creak of the gate oddly disorienting now that I no longer belonged. Smoke rose from the fire pit in the backyard, thick and gray. Lauren stood beside it, tossing in papers and folders. I stepped closer, enough to see the edge of my handwriting on one of the pages. My old reports, my letters. A manila envelope with Evelyn's initials was the last to go. "You're burning my past," I called out. She didn't turn, didn't flinch, just fed the flames. I tried calling her, then my mother, then my father. All dead ends. Voicemails, disconnections. Dad picked up, just long enough to hang up after 3 rings. I went back to my car and just sat. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I only stared at the house and felt something calcify inside me. Not hate. Not yet. But the first stones of it. That night, back at the motel, my phone pinged. A Facebook message. From Clara Thompson, our neighbor since childhood. She was always quiet, always watching from her porch like a local historian in lawn chairs. "Rachel, I saw someone at the house last night with Lauren. Not from around here. Be careful. Something's not right." I replied immediately. No answer. Minutes passed. Then she wrote again. "I've seen this sort of thing before. Be careful." The next day, I met Nate, my cousin, at a cafe on Main Street. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but he showed up wearing worry like a second skin. His voice was low, almost apologetic. "Lauren's been meeting with a lawyer. She's working on legal grounds to declare you have no claim to the house, or the trust, or anything." He paused. "She told the attorney you're unstable, a burden, holding the family back." I gripped my coffee cup to stop my hands from shaking. When I returned to the motel that night, I opened Instagram. I hadn't in weeks, but something compelled me. The top of the feed, Lauren's newest post. Photo: Lauren, Mom, Dad, sitting around the dinner table. Candles lit, wine poured. Caption: "Family night. Nothing better than being together." I stared at the image until my eyes blurred. I was there, in the same town, breathing the same air, but not in that frame, not even in their idea of family. And for the first time in my life, I said it out loud, even if only to myself. I don't have a family anymore. Monday morning arrived with the kind of chill that settles into bone. I was drafting a formal complaint against Lauren for professional misconduct when my phone lit up with an email notification. My fingers went cold. Evelyn. Her name hadn't surfaced in any official channel for over a decade. I opened the email. "Major Bennett, I'd like to speak with you directly regarding the Evelyn Bennett Trust. This concerns your standing as a named beneficiary. Confidential meeting requested ASAP." It was signed by Colonel Amanda Pierce, Lauren's commanding officer. I barely remembered driving to the base. Her office was stark, orderly. A single framed photograph of the Absaroka Mountains hung behind her desk. She offered no smile, only a nod of recognition, and gestured to a seat. "I won't waste your time," she said. "Evelyn created a trust in your name before her death. It owns the family cabin and holds approximately $150,000, meant to support your military career. It was never meant to be accessed by anyone else." My breath caught. What? I've never... No one told me. "I know. That's why we're here." She slid a USB across the table. A thick file followed. Receipts, authorizations, invoices. All signed by Diane Bennett, authorized by Lauren. Renovations, spa-grade sauna, imported hardwood flooring, state-of-the-art security system, all billed as improvements on trust property. I shook my head, mouth dry. "They used Evelyn's money," I whispered, "for themselves." Pierce nodded. Then she opened a drawer and retrieved a thin envelope. "Evelyn left this with me personally. She said to give it to you if things ever got dark." It was her handwriting. I knew it instantly. "Rachel, if you're reading this, it means the family has lost its way. The trust is your protection. The house is yours. The funds are for your service, not their comfort." I tried to believe they'd do the right thing, but if they haven't, stand your ground. Pierce leaned back. "She and I served together back in '93. She said you were the kind who serves quietly, and quietly gets erased. This trust was her way of making sure that never happened." My hands trembled. Then Pierce's expression darkened. "I need to warn you. Lauren has a pattern. When challenged, she strikes fast. Internal reports show she's filed false claims against rivals before. If she sees you as a threat, expect retaliation." I nodded slowly. It wasn't fear I felt. It was something colder, clearer. She knew exactly where to strike. Not my record, but my name, my credibility, my ability to serve. I left the office with the USB in my coat pocket, and Evelyn's letter pressed against my chest. Not because it hurt, but because it anchored me. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. And this time, I wasn't going to retreat. Back in the motel, the room felt colder than usual. The heater wheezed with age, but the chill wasn't from the air. It was in my bones. My breath caught slightly as I plugged the USB into my laptop and opened the folder labeled Evelyn Trust. Inside were 3 files: a scanned handwritten letter, a digital document titled Encryption Notes, Personal, and a video clip titled simply, For Rachel. I clicked on the letter first. The scanned paper filled my screen in Evelyn's neat, slanted script. My dearest Rachel, if you are reading this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye the way I wanted. And for that, I'm so sorry. But there are things I needed you to know. Things I couldn't say aloud while I was still within reach of those who would twist them. She wrote of Lauren, of watching her slowly manipulate the family, charm the neighbors, assert dominance over conversations and rooms and decisions. Evelyn had seen it happening, but chose silence. Until now. I didn't put the house in your name because I feared they'd come for you, that they'd tear you apart if they knew I chose you. So I hid it behind legal armor, not because you weren't worthy, but because you were. Every sentence was a needle threading pain with resolve. I kept reading, hardly blinking. There may come a time when every door feels shut, when your own blood turns cold to your presence. When that time comes, remember this trust isn't just money, it is belief. Not belief in legacy, but belief in you. And if the law is all we have left to shield you, then let it be your sword. The next page was an attached note, one that hadn't been scanned perfectly, creased, a little blurred. Lauren once tried to have me declared incompetent. She said I was slipping. She wanted control. She threatened to file if I didn't rewrite the trust in her favor. I refused. She called me weak. But I'm not the one who's afraid of your light, Rachel. She is. I scrolled to the final page, an original copy of the trust's lock clause. I read it 3 times to be sure I understood. If any named party was found to have attempted to override, exploit, or misappropriate the trust, their rights to the property would be revoked and suspended pending legal review. All sales or transfers would be frozen. Lauren hadn't just played dirty. She'd broken the rules of a system built to protect me. I sat back. My eyes weren't just wide. They were clear. I printed the entire file set, duplicated the USB, emailed copies to a JAG officer I had once served under. I uploaded everything to a cloud server in a dummy account. I wasn't just preparing, I was fortifying. Finally, I opened the video. Evelyn sat at her desk, her uniform jacket hung on the back of her chair. She looked older than I remembered, but her voice hadn't lost its edge. If you're watching this, Rachel, then it means I couldn't outrun the clock. So listen to me now. Serve with your heart, but protect that heart with law, with grit, with intelligence. You owe no one your silence. She leaned forward. They'll tell you you're too quiet, too soft. What they really mean is you're harder to control. The screen went black, and I began to fight back. They came for me 2 days later. I was called into the internal security office at Malmstrom, formally, coldly. The tone in the memo alone had the weight of accusation. When I walked in, a junior officer I didn't recognize asked me to sit. There's been a complaint filed, Major Bennett. You've been accused of unauthorized data extraction and mishandling of sensitive internal documents. I felt the words hit before I even fully registered them. USB, Evelyn's files. Lauren. Of course. Who filed the complaint? I asked. He glanced down. Anonymous, ma'am, but the phrasing, it aligns closely with an internal memo written by Major Lauren Bennett last quarter. The walls around me buzzed, the air suddenly thinner. I clenched my jaw but said nothing. If they wanted fear, I wouldn't give them the pleasure. I walked out of that office not defeated, but more certain than ever. I called James Carter. He showed up that night, laptop in hand, looking over his shoulder as he entered my room. "You were right," he said. "She's setting you up." He handed me a flash drive. "She sent this to Captain Norris last month. I pulled it from his archive before he wiped it." I opened the file. It was a message from Lauren, casual in tone, chilling in content. "If Rachel becomes a problem, I have ways to ensure she's disqualified. Nobody wants someone handling intel who can't be trusted with protocol. All it takes is one red flag." My breath caught. But James wasn't done. "I also found this." He opened a second file, a deed summary. Lauren and Diane had filed preliminary documents to transfer the cabin to a private developer, Dale Ridge Properties, a proposed luxury resort. Sale value, $820,000. "But there's more," he said. "That clause in the trust you showed me? The one about disputed authority? It was triggered automatically the moment you filed that first challenge with JAG. The trust is locked, temporarily frozen. They can't finalize the sale without violating federal protections." I sat back, trying to catch my breath as everything rearranged itself inside me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was being erased. For profit. I called Colonel Pierce. The next morning, she arranged a private review meeting. Legal present. Command oversight. No press. No families. But I knew what it really was. My war room. This wasn't about reclaiming a cabin or even money anymore. It was about dignity. It was about refusing to be edited out of my own life by someone who believed silence equaled consent. I stood in front of the motel mirror that night, wearing my old Air Force badge Evelyn had once given me. I pinned it to the collar of my blazer, exactly where she used to wear hers. My hands no longer trembled. They tried to disappear me, but they'd forgotten something Evelyn had always known. I don't vanish. I wait. And then I rise. The room was too quiet for a military base. Thick silence pressed into the walls of the top-floor conference room at Malmstrom, broken only by the occasional creak of leather chairs and the soft hum of the overhead lights. Walnut wood shimmered under the sterile glow. Beyond the tall windows, the Absaroka Range stood like a silent jury. I entered flanked by Colonel Pierce and James Carter. My hands didn't shake, but my heart beat like a warning drum. Across the table sat Lauren in full uniform, her posture textbook perfect. Next to her, my mother Diane, Father Robert, and Henry Cole, their family lawyer, as if that term still included me. I took my seat. Pierce spoke first. She opened a portfolio and projected financial records onto the wall. "Over the past 2 years, $147,300 has been withdrawn from the Evelyn Trust for renovations to the Golden Ridge property," she said. "None of these improvements fall under the Trust's mandate to support active-duty military service." She began listing items: imported Italian hardwood, a luxury sauna, smart surveillance systems. Lauren shifted in her seat, but didn't break. "I upgraded the property for the family," she said finally. "Rachel lived there too, didn't she?" I looked her dead in the eye. "I didn't live there. I was thrown out of there. By you." Gasps were swallowed, but no one interrupted. I took a breath and leaned forward. "Beyond misuse of funds, I present evidence that Lauren Bennett knowingly falsified an internal complaint to discredit me," I said. "Here is a Word file with metadata proving she forged a document using my name. Here is a chat log, retrieved by James Carter, where she stated her intent to render me unfit for clearance." I clicked play on a short clip. Lauren's words, recorded and damning. "If Rachel becomes a problem, I have ways to ensure she's disqualified." Her face drained of color for the first time. Then I turned to the projection again. "Here is the internal record of a failed attempt to sell the Golden Ridge property to Dale Ridge developers. an attempt made without consent, in violation of the locked clause in the trust. James stepped in. The title transfer was initiated and partially filed under Diane Bennett and Lauren Bennett's names, despite the property being locked by the trust's integrity clause. Pierce looked at my mother, her tone measured but sharp. "You were aware of this?" Diane blinked rapidly. We didn't know, Rachel." I interrupted, not harshly, but clearly. "You thought I wouldn't fight back." Then Pierce revealed the final blow, a video of Evelyn, presented as part of a sworn statement, naming Lauren as someone who had tried to alter her will by coercion. Diane's composure cracked. She pulled her hand from Lauren's, wiping her tears with trembling fingers. "We just wanted her to be successful," she murmured. "But maybe we put our faith in the wrong person." Robert remained silent, as always. But for the first time, I saw his head bow. Not in prayer, but in shame. Pierce issued her conclusion. Effective immediately, all assets under the Evelyn Bennett Trust are frozen. Lauren Bennett is referred for ethical review under the USAF Code of Conduct. I cleared my throat, already having prepared for this. I propose the following. A portion of the trust is used to purchase a separate home in my name, near Malmstrom. A third-party trustee will manage the original cabin. No member of the Bennett family, including Lauren, may access trust assets moving forward. Lauren's face contorted. She slammed her palms on the table, rising. "She doesn't deserve any of this. She's weak. She's nothing but a shadow." I stood too. Calm. Steady. "You're right," I said. "I've been a shadow. But at least I never needed to steal someone else's light to feel visible." The room didn't erupt. It imploded. Quietly. And completely. After the meeting, I walked out alone. No ceremony. No victory lap. But I wore Evelyn's badge on my chest, and for the first time in years, I lifted my chin to the sun without flinching. 3 months passed. I now lived in a modest, sunlit home just 10 minutes from Malmstrom. No security gates, no luxury finishings, just peace. A garden I watered myself, a coffee mug that never went missing, silence that didn't sting. In the living room, Evelyn's Air Force badge hung in a shadow box above my desk. The morning sun always caught it first. Iron Mind. The program that started all of this was not only accepted, it had been granted trial funding through the Air Force Resilience Directorate. I now ran weekly sessions with junior officers and returning combat medics. They listened, they responded, and for the first time in my career, I felt like my voice had weight. I'd also started therapy with Dr. Ellen Harper, a military psychologist who didn't tiptoe around pain. "You didn't break the family," she told me once. "They broke themselves trying to break you." Lauren was reassigned to a desk position pending review. I heard she no longer wore her medals in public. That told me enough. Mom texted once. "I'm sorry." I never replied. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. Some bridges are better left unrebuilt. Nate and James became my people. No bloodlines, no childhood obligations, just presence. They were there when I moved, when I painted my own walls, when I burned the last of the old letters. Not out of spite, but to make room. Then, one afternoon, I opened a box sent from the cabin, now managed by a legal trustee. Inside, wrapped in Evelyn's old lavender scarf, was something hard and cold and deeply familiar. It was my first Air Force badge, replica engraved on the back. "Shape the world, Rachel. Don't let the world shape you." I held it in my palm like a vow. Later that evening, my email pinged. Subject: National Military Wellness Conference, Keynote Invitation. Message: Major Bennett, we'd be honored to have you present Iron Mind as our closing keynote in Denver this fall. I sat down slowly, the moment pressing into me. I looked at Evelyn's picture on the desk. Her smile just as quiet, just as fierce. You saw me before I ever knew how to be seen, I whispered. And finally, I felt like I had arrived, not just at a place, but at myself. In life, sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, they come from the people who once called you family. But pain has a way of revealing truth, and truth, if faced with courage, becomes the beginning of freedom. You don't have to carry what broke you. You can build something new from it. If this story spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to follow the channel. Your presence means more than you know.